green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go.
Good morning, Eagles fans in the city of Philadelphia and all over the world. He's John McMullen, and I am your host, Tone DeShields II, in for a down and out Jody Mack. Now, look, you guys, Jody will be back. He's not sleeping. He's not sleeping.
So first comment we get every day is Jody up. Jody is tested COVID positive, so we wish him well. We hope he gets better as quickly as possible. And obviously we joke about it sometimes here, telling Jody and I that, the NFL declared COVID over. It's not over. A lot of people are still getting it. Jody, unfortunately, tested positive. Not feeling well, but he'll be back as quickly as possible. Hopefully he's listening. And if he is, I'm going to try not to rip Nakobe Dean and get Jody upset.
Right, and I'll try my hardest not to take a crap in Jody's seat, right? I'm going to try to hold it down for you guys until Jody gets back. And, of course, we have a stacked show for you guys. We have Jeff Kerr from CBSSports.com coming in at 8:20, and we also have Ed Kracz from Sports Illustrated Eagles Today coming in at 9:20. You know those guys always give us great content to discuss. But, let's not waste any time, John. There was something I was doing some research on last night, and I came across this article via Bleacher Report written by an Alex Ballantyne. And as we all know, it's the season of the list. Everyone has their top 5 everything, top 10 anything, who's the most important, who's the best. There's so many people coming up with their own list to pretty much keep everyone busy and satisfied throughout the season. But this one was very interesting to me. The topic was Eagles players who won't live up to the hype in 2022.
Ooh.
Now, this is a quick way to get Eagles fans panties a bunch. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of ways you can go there. It's about expectations, right? And the higher the expectations, the lower, the more opportunity for guys not to live up to them. I mean, it makes sense. If you don't expect something out of somebody and they do something, they're surprised, it's great. Miles Sanders is a guy, like I always say, I use him as an example of Eagles fans went nuts after his rookie season. And they're putting him up there with Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook. And I'm like, whoa. Slow your roll. And now that you've seen, and Miles is a good player, not a great player, good player. Now I think he's a little bit undervalued to the point where everybody kind of dismisses him. So that's kind of the big pendulum you have with expectations. So, but I didn't mean to interrupt. Where were you going with that as far as Eagles not living up to the expectations?
Right. So, I'm always of the mindset of under-promise and over-deliver because, like you said, you can curb those expectations, right?
Yeah.
But this writer, Alex Ballantyne, indicated 3 players that stuck out to me. And those 3 players were, as you said, Miles Sanders, Darius Slay, which was a bit of a surprise to me, and A.J. Brown. Now, we all understand with Miles Sanders, he's pretty much in a very unique situation. Well, maybe not so unique to the NFL, but unique for him, right? He's not necessarily in control of his destiny in any way. And you can make an argument his destiny may be written regardless of how he performs. If he does too well, he's not going to get that contract. If he doesn't do well enough, he's definitely not getting the contract, and they may try to shortchange him. So there's so many different ways you can go about it. Then with Darius Slade, the writer took the angle of his age, and the fact that he's a year older, but still give him credit for being that lofty veteran, having savvy technique. He may not be a Pro Bowler again, but it all remains to be seen. And then AJ Brown, it's quite obvious. AJ Brown is not in control of his destiny in any way. Jalen Hurts is pretty much the locomotive of this offense, and we're going to have to see if he can actually get the team from point A to point B. But those three names I mentioned, do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have any counterpoints? Anybody else that you may want to throw into that list? Because, again, Eagles fans have a high expectation of this team this year, and if this team doesn't deliver with the way the roster is loaded, someone's going to have to pay. And your thoughts?
Well, I think with Miles, I kind of said I don't agree with Miles because I don't think the expectations are there. I think people have already readjusted with Miles Sanders to the point they've gone a little bit in the other direction. Now, everybody's different. I'm sure there's some people out there who think Miles is going to be a 1,250-yard back. I always use that demarcation line because especially when you're as old as me, Tone, you remember 1,250-yard backs. They basically don't exist anymore. There were two last season, Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb. That's it. So, the game has changed. Obviously, it's a passing-heavy game, but also teams like to use, and Nick Sirianni is in this category as well, they like to use a committee approach because it's a position where if you give the football to running backs, and look at Derrick Henry. I mean, Derrick Henry's a guy that would have been at 1,250, but even him, as big, as strong, as powerful, he got hurt, right? That's what happens to running backs. We've seen it with Saquon Barkley up the turnpike. They get hurt if you give them 300 touches. So Miles has a history over the past couple seasons of getting hurt anyway, missing 4 or 5 games here and there. He's not the type to carry the football 300 times anyway. So I think Miles Sanders is what he is. He's going to get you 850 yards. He's going to get you 5 yards a carry. The one sort of weird anomaly last season was he never got in the end zone.
That was strange.
Yeah. Now, I think that'll change because he'll hit a couple home runs. For whatever reasons, the home runs went away. But, he's not going to be the third down back. He's not going to be the hurry up back. Kenny Gainwell's going to be that. And, we'll see about the goal line. Jordan Howard's not here. Boston Scott seems to have a feel for it, but you really want a 5'6"? You think that's going to continue? So that'll be interesting to see how the Eagles handle the goal line work if Jordan Howard's not back by that time, which, we'll see. Or Kennedy Brooks maybe is an undrafted rookie, doesn't pop his head out of the hole, the rabbit hole, so to speak. So I don't know about Miles. Now, the other two, Slay, I got to tell you, and I hope Slay's not listening because Slay doesn't like it when he gets great player.
He also doesn't like it when you call him Darius either.
Yeah. Oh, he hates it. I don't know how he can have a year like he had last year. So from that perspective, he was so good last year. I think there's going to be sort of a regression to the mean. Still going to be a top-tier corner. But, I mean, he had the 3 touchdowns last year. I mean, that's kind of an anomaly. We talked about anomalies. You can't count on that consistency. He gave up less than 30 yards a game when he was traveling with top receivers. You get one hit. Look at Jalen Ramsey in the playoffs. That's supposedly the best corner in the game, right? He got hit deep in a couple games against Tampa Bay and was it in the Super Bowl?
Yes.
He got beat a couple times deep, and all of a sudden 30 goes to 60. Bang! That's how quick it can happen. So maybe just from the expectation level, but at the end of the day, Slay's still going to be a great corner. So it's kind of like what's your definition of not living up to the expectations? If you expect 3 touchdowns, and you expect less than 30 yards a game, you're probably going to be disappointed in what happens this year, because that's just the nature of the NFL. And who was the third guy?
AJ Brown.
AJ.
Brown. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, he's not
I get the thought process there, because the quarterback is not a high volume thrower. I talk about this all the time, and the best examples I give are Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr. You know, the Vikings receivers and the Raiders receivers are going to put up numbers. You know it, because they have high volume throwers. Are they going to win games? You know, Justin Jefferson, Eagles fans know, because of Jalen Reagor. I mean, the guy's been unbelievable. But you also have to realize, if Justin Jefferson was here, he's not here with Kirk Cousins, who throws for 4,000 yards every stinking single season, dating back to when he was in Washington. A bad year for him is like 3,900. So that's part of the receiver. I always talk about receivers, guys who get the football tone. They are at the mercy of the vehicle that gets them the football. Now, the good thing about A.J. Brown, he comes from a situation which is basically the same in Tennessee, where it's run first with Derrick Henry. Ryan Tannehill's probably a little bit better than Jalen Hurts when it comes to throwing the football, but he's not Derek Carr. He's not Kirk Cousins. And he puts up 1,000-yard seasons. He's had 2 already. He would have had a third. He'd be 3 for 3 if not for injuries. So, again, what's your expectations? Do you want 1,500 yards like Justin Jefferson? You're probably going to be disappointed. If you're counting on 1,100, he'll probably get there.
And
he's healthy.
And that's my thing, right? Because, you know, you have a guy in AJ Brown who has all the talent in the world to get you those 1,400 yard seasons. But let's be totally frank about who the Philadelphia Eagles have been. Carson Wentz was our first 4,000-yard passer.
Yeah.
Donovan McNabb came close with about 3,916. But the Eagles, in my humble opinion, when you really think about it in hindsight, haven't really had a prolific passing attack. So we've weaved this narrative of expectations around this team, around these players, for good reason, because there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of home run hitters potentially on this team. And that brings me to some honorable mentions, who I think they've been getting a lot of love this offseason, you know, but there's still a chance that these guys can flame out. You know, one of the guys that I've thought about was Quez Watkins. And look, I'm a Quez Watkins fan. I love what he brought to the table last season. Quez Watkins was a home run hitter for us. You know, he was that utility guy, came in. You know, he saved a lot of drives for us. Let's be totally honest. He saved a lot of bad throws from Jalen Hurts. But I think it's a bit unfair or unrealistic to really crown Quez Watkins so early in his career, knowing that there's a chance that he can actually get less touches this year because of A.J. Brown. You know, because of Dallas Goedert, you know, beginning to come into his own as well. And also later on in the show, I want to talk about that article that you and Ed Kracz have been crafting about the top 25 guys. I know Dallas Goedert just, you know, cracked your top 5 at number 5. So,
and by the way, he was number 1 for me. Kracz is the reason he's so far down.
Kracz had him at what, like number 8, number 9, something like that?
Something like that, which is crazy. So we'll rip him about that later.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You know, because I'm a huge Dallas Goedert fan. And, you know, again, we'll get into all that. But Quez Watkins, a guy who's been getting a lot of love. Marcus Epps, a guy who's been getting a lot of love. And James Bradberry. And I know fans may not want to hear this, but there's a chance. James Bradberry had a down year last year. That's just the reality. Do I personally agree it was that bad? No, I don't think it was that bad. I just believe he was on a bad team, and he was left hanging a lot by his safeties. And then Marcus Epps, a guy who has shown some flashes of impact, but again, we haven't seen him in a full stretch of a season. How will he do when he's gotten beat? You know, will he recover? Does he have a short-term memory? You know, there's things that we have to keep in mind in the 17-game stretch. So out of those names I mentioned, Quez Watkins, Marcus Epps, James Bradberry, what are your thoughts on those guys potentially having breakout seasons, but also being at risk of a bust season as well?
Well, I don't know if a guy like Bradbury can have a breakout season, because he's been a Pro Bowl player in the past. So, it's more like, can he bounce back to being a Pro Bowl level player?
Good
One
point.
of the positive things, we had Pat Leonard on a couple, probably 3-4 weeks ago, who covers the Giants, does a great job for the Daily News up there, had mentioned James. He played hurt a lot of last season. And, that to me is a positive sign from the perspective of, well, maybe that's the reason you saw a little bit of a downtick from James Bradbury. I think he's a good player, and he'll continue to play like a good player, and he's a proven player. And I think this defense and having Slay playing opposite him will only help him, because he doesn't have to deal with the number one receivers. He'll probably be and he'll probably get an opportunity to make a few more plays, Tone. The other guys, though, the younger players, look, man, I woke up, I think it was 10 days ago or so, and somebody's trying to tell me Tyler Boyd isn't as good as Quez Watkins, the third receiver on the Bengals, who's got 2 1,000-yard seasons. And
Oh, my goodness.
Boy, I didn't think I was going to wake up to this nonsense. I mean, Quez has got a couple problems, and one is A.J. Brown is here now. So when we talked to Nick Sirianni last year, we would always say, look, game planning starts with 6 and 88, which is Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert. Turned out by the end of the season, it was really 88 and 6. It was really Goedert first, because Jalen got really comfortable with him, and then Devontae. This year, it's going to be, they're going to start with 11, then 6, then 88. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. You're in the crumb category there. And again, we're not talking about 4,500-yard passing seasons. You mentioned this franchise as a whole had one 4,000-yard. So I always bring this up with Jody. All right, Kirk Cousins, average quarterback, right? Probably right. I call him the demarcation line from being, he's probably better than your quarterback, but he's not good enough to win with, right? This is Kirk Cousins since he took over as a starter in Washington. 41-66, 49-17, 4,093, 42-98, 42-65, 42-21. His only season under 4,000 yards is when the year Dalvin Cook went nuts and he was still over 3,600. That's Kirk Cousins. That, how many, I got to count up. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 7 seasons with over 4,000 yards.
I always say if you stick Jalen Hurts' mentality on Kirk Cousins, you have maybe the perfect quarterback. Kirk Cousins, he can throw the pill, but crunch time, big games, prime time, especially.
Exactly.
He lacks the gene.
What I'm trying to say is there's a difference between high volume throwers and winning football games. Statistics are about high volume throwers, and to have big statistics, you need high volume throwers, and the Eagles don't have that, and they haven't had it for much of their history, to be honest. And again, they have one. This is a run-of-the-mill, middle-of-the-road quarterback who's got 6 by himself. So if you're expecting 1,300 yards from A.J. Brown, 1,100 yards from Devontae Smith, 800 yards from Quez Watkins, you're going to be disappointed. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. And unfortunately, like you said, having a guy like A.J. Brown there, Dallas Goedert is going to need to be fed. You brought in Zach Pascal, who knows how what his usage would be in the long term. Devontae Smith, you still got your running backs that they're going to kick the ball to. Jalen Hurts may take off and run. There's so many different nuances involved with this team that it's kind of hard to really give anyone a real true stat prediction, because ultimately this offense continues to evolve. But you guys, we have our guest Jeff Kerr in the building. We have him coming up in the next segment. He's John McMullen. I'm Tone DeShields II. You guys are tuned into Birds 365 while I'm in for Jody Mack, the man, the myth, the legend. Keep it locked, you guys.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Good morning. You guys are tuning to Birdies 365. He's John McMullen, and I'm Tone DeShields II, filling in for a sick Jody Mack. Thank you guys for locking in on another episode. Make sure you guys smash that like button first and foremost. But as you guys can see, we're joined by a very, very special guest, the man, the myth, the legend, Jeff Kerr from CBSSports.com. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, Tone. Glad to see you in the host chair for Jody today.
Hey, I'm doing my best.
It's good to see you, Jeff, and thanks for being malleable. Our exciting news, but I want to keep that under wraps coming up for Jeff Kerr. So stay tuned for that. But you were in the green room. Tony and I were kind of discussing expectations and players, and you know how it is. I mean, you're on social media, Jeff, a lot, and I see you get into it occasionally with some people, and I've learned over the years that it's probably not worth it. I do my best to stay above the fray, but expectations are what they are, and sometimes they're unrealistic. Has the pendulum kind of shifted for you? Are things starting to get a little bit unrealistic after what's been, look, to be fair, a very, very good offseason for Howie Roseman?
So I'm just going to go from an NFL perspective. In the last 2 weeks, I have heard these types of takes. Dak Prescott's not a good quarterback. Dak Prescott is overrated. Lamar Jackson can't throw. Lamar Jackson's overrated. The Ravens can't win with Lamar Jackson. What's the other one? Oh, Joe Burrow's not any good. I've heard that one before.
Joe Burrow.
So it's like, oh, Patrick Mahomes isn't any good. Then the Chiefs are taking a big step downhill this year. There's no Tyreek Hill. I'm trying to think of all the other ones I've heard over the last but those have been the main ones, and we haven't even got to Jalen Hurts and the Eagles yet. It seems like that's more of a Philadelphia thing because nationally, a lot of people believe in Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, and I just don't know if Jalen Hurts' doubters want to hear that right
now. Tom?
That's interesting you say that because it's really easy to get caught up in the vacuum of Philadelphia, right? You hear everything around the city. Everyone's putting the utmost pressure on Jalen Hurts for good reason, right? Jalen Hurts is trying to be the franchise quarterback. But at the same time, he has flaws in his game, flaws you can't really ignore. What I know you say the national attention of Jalen Hurts isn't as scrutinizing as the local, right? But what is the national pulse on Jalen Hurts? What's the national view of Jalen Hurts?
I think right now he's I don't want to call him a rising star because that's not correct, but he's a quarterback on the rise. I think that's a fair assessment of him. The Eagles are going to be really good if Jalen Hurts takes his game to the next level. That seems to be the natural perspective here. And a lot of the people that at least I have discussed over Jalen Hurts, he had a good year last year. They did a lot better than people thought. I still think the Eagles are being slept on as a contender in the NFC. I think everybody's talking about Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Los Angeles. They're the three, obviously. But then it's a wide open field. Can the Minnesota Vikings be good? What are the New Orleans Saints? Are the Dallas Cowboys overrated? Yes, they are. They were overrated last year. Are the Arizona Cardinals going to be good? Are they going to fade in the second half? And it just seems like the Eagles are that team that I don't want to say anybody forgets about them, but it just kind of feels like a team at least from some people, it's like, okay, we feel they're going to win 10 games. They're going to be in the mix. It's just how good are they going to be?
Well, let's be fair, Jeff. So you mentioned the three teams I think everybody thinks are at the top of the NFC. One, obviously, is the reigning Super Bowl champions, and you have that natural, it's very tough to repeat. But you also have Green Bay, you have Tampa Bay and their history. And what's the difference between those three teams and the Eagles? I mean, we're talking about Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and then you have the Eagles, who have a good roster. And I'll bring up our buddy Derek Gunn again because he created a bit of a firestorm. And I think people and let me make this clear now that I've gone down this road. D. Gunn is above reproach as a reporter. The fact that everybody gets down in the weeds about the mechanics of a 7-on-7 drill, which I was trying to explain to people, that's not the point of this story. Somebody can get it wrong. They might not be paying attention. But you don't have 10 straight reps in 7-on-7. You're not going to throw 3 interceptions in 7-on-7. You're not taking sacks, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Okay. The point of it was the Eagles are not comfortable with Jalen Hurts. Why would they be comfortable with Jalen Hurts, Jeff Kerr? Why should they be comfortable with Jalen Hurts? I would be angry at this team if they were comfortable with Jalen Hurts. He can prove it, but he hasn't proven it yet.
If they were comfortable with Jalen, they wouldn't have tried to trade for Russell Wilson this
Exactly.
That's all I got to say about it. And look, I love Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen Hurts can be a really good player in this league. I think he is what people are calling him, a player on the rise. And I could see a Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts. And is that the worst thing in the world? No, because at least you have a franchise quarterback. And I think that's what he ultimately can be. I don't think he'll ever be Patrick Mahomes. I don't think he'll ever be Justin Herbert. But if you can get a top 10 quarterback out of this guy with that roster, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape.
And that's my thing, right, Jeff? You have people who are trying to jump out the window and say Jalen Hurts can be elite. He can be elite. But little do they realize elite is so far in between. There aren't many elite guys in this NFL. Once you start to name off guys like Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Joe Burrow and Herbert and Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, it gets a little dicey after that, right? And I feel that people need to, again, curb their expectations. That's that word again, expectations. Curb the expectations and accept the fact that Jalen doesn't need to be elite to be productive in this offense. He doesn't have to be the best quarterback. He doesn't have to be top 5. If Jalen can somewhat broach that top 12, top 11 range and show that he can make consistent throws, I think he'll be in good shape. But again, this Philadelphia Eagles team for the past 20 years, or maybe in our history, have yet to really come close to having a prolific passing offense. And that begs the question, will a top 12 or top 13 Jalen Hurts be enough for Howie Roseman to commit to him? We know he has 2 first-round picks in the gun for next season. So what's your thoughts on that?
See, that's what makes it tough. If he's a top 12 quarterback, if he has a good year, and I'll just be fancy guru here and say he throws for 3,700 yards, runs for 700, has a 65% completion rate. Is that good enough? And that's what I worry about. Is that good enough for Howie Roseman, or does he go into the wish and say, you know what, I might have a shot at Bryce Young here. I might have a shot at C.J. Stroud. I might have a shot at a better quarterback, or in his mind, a franchise quarterback. Or can I flip Jalen Hurts and get a top draft pick? That's what upsets me. So I'm looking at it as, okay, what do you have to do to essentially prove Jalen Hurts is a franchise quarterback? Because you're always going to have his doubters. I see it all the time. People tell me on Twitter every single day, he can't make this throw, he can't make that throw. And usually this is my response back. You guys know I can nitpick like you do and do this with Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert every single day of the week. It's not this or this or this. You can't just dissect one play or highlights, as McMullen calls them, or low light. You got to evaluate the total package. And if it's 3,700 yards, 65% completion rate, 700 rushing yards, I can live with that. Oh, and by the way, the Eagles go 11-6 or 12-5. I can live with that as well, but can the front office?
Right. And John, really quickly, and that's my question. What is Howie Roseman exactly looking for from this quarterback position? Is it 3,700 yards, like you said? Is it 3,800? Is it a consistent 4,000-yard passer? What is that benchmark that he could potentially be comfortable with? And John, you can jump in on this because I'm genuinely curious. I know we all make a lot of assumptions about what's a prolific passing offense and what that may look like in Philadelphia, but what exactly is Howie Roseman looking for? Have you guys heard anything behind the scenes?
Well, I could. This is the frustrating part, and people, there is no benchmark, there is no number. I will say, if he throws for 4,000 yards, that's probably not a good thing. It's probably not a good thing.
Interesting.
That means you're throwing the football too much. That means you're probably behind. I thought, and it was Chris Franklin, our buddy from NJ.com, he brought up a good point about the third receiver position. And we asked him, Jeff, do you think Quez Watkins is going to play more, or do you think Zach Pascal is going to play more? And I think everybody defaults to, well, it's going to be Quez Watkins, right? He's more talented. He's the explosive guy. And Chris pointed out, it's counterintuitive. You probably don't want that. You probably want Zach Pascal out there more, because if Zach Pascal's out there, what does that indicate? That indicates you're ahead in the fourth quarter and you're trying to run the football and you're trying to run the 4-minute offense and you're trying to get to the finish line. Fantasy football is what it is, fantasy football. But I gave, Kirk Cousins' numbers, Derek Carr's numbers. The more you throw the football, it's not always a good sign. It's not always a good sign. And for all the prodigious numbers of Justin Jefferson, well, the Vikings haven't been that good. They're behind games. He's got opportunities to catch the football. Great receiver. I'm not trying to tremendous receiver. But I think the assumption is that if you drop him in this offense, he's going to have the same numbers. No, he's not. No, he's not. And you don't want that. You might want him for your fantasy team, but the Eagles want to win games. So Howie Roseman, to get to your point, John, he's going to evaluate, can I win consistently with this particular quarterback? And that's intangible, and that's going to frustrate people. Jeff?
And that's the other thing. Like, what defines intangibles? Because we all think Kirk Cousins here is the top 15 quarterback in this league. But then you get Vikings fans that get upset because I'll point out his 2-9 record on Monday Night Football, and they'll be like, well, he won his last 2. I'm like, yeah, against the Bears. Let's not get bullshit. Let's put things in perspective. And, same with Dak Prescott. I think Dak Prescott's a really good quarterback. But facts are the facts. He's never been to an NFC Championship game. I think he has a losing record in the playoffs. And his last playoff performance is not good. And I'm telling people, look, we're in year 7 now of Dak Prescott. Is this who he is? Like, is that what you want? Like,
well, I don't want to, but real quick, I just want to break in, Jeff, and I don't want to, but I'll, because Jody's not here, I'll tweak him a little bit. And I hope you're getting better, Jody. But Jody used to criticize the heck out of me for saying, Matthew Stafford's a good quarterback. Matthew Stafford's a good quarterback. Matthew Stafford's a good quarterback. For years on the Lions, it was a bad team. It was a good quarterback on a bad team. Now, he got validated last year. He finally got on a good team. He wins the Super Bowl. He's validated, right? But, if New Eagles safety, Jaquiski Tart, can just pick up an interception, he's not validated. That's how close it is. That's how close it is. But I can tell you, Matthew Stafford, and I've been telling people for years, is a damn good quarterback.
Very.
And that's the intangible part of it that is frustrating, I think, for people. I can't say that.
Jimmy Garoppolo is one of those people. He's not Matthew Stafford, but he's a lot better than people say he is. And I'm not saying he's going to win for another franchise like he did with San Francisco, but if you're the 49ers, you better be damn sure Trey Lance is that much better than him, because you've been to 2 NFC Championship games in the past 3 years, and I know Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't played well in fourth quarters in these postseason games, but he's led the NFL in yards per attempt.
I'm going to be honest. I'm not with you with Jimmy G. And the reason why, Jeff, is because of Kyle Shanahan. Anybody who knows this show, watches the show, I have tremendous respect for Kyle Shanahan.
And that's the risk the 49ers are taking. It's we can win with anybody under Kyle Shanahan, and that's fine. I agree with that. But
let me push back a little bit, you guys. I don't know how true that is. And this is me playing devil's advocate here. Let's be honest. When Jimmy G's in, Kyle Shanahan and San Fran, they win. When he's not there, they seem like they can't really figure out which way is up, which way is down.
All right, counterpoint. When Nick Bosa's playing, they win. When Nick Bosa's not playing, they don't win.
That's probably going to go, McMullen. I'm like, when I picked the MVP, I had to pick MVPs of every NFC team this year. And I didn't do the easy way out of the quarterback. Nick Bosa was mine, because when Nick Bosa
unbelievable
gets a sack,
player. Unblockable.
The 49ers were like 9-1, I think, when Nick Bosa gets a sack. By the way,
I think he's better than his brother, honestly. He's better than his brother.
He is.
He
but
is.
Joey's pretty good, too. Joey's pretty good, too.
It's funny, like, so when I did this, I think they're 9-1 when Bosa gets a sack. Bosa is already the 49ers postseason sack leader. He's only played like 5 or 6 postseason games. It's kind of insane to think about that. Like, if it's a postseason game, Nick Bosa is going to get a sack.
Yeah, getting back to Jimmy G, and that's kind of interesting because he's cleared to throw, and it's going to be interesting to see where he lands up. You go back to their first run to the Super Bowl, and by the way, they should have won that Super Bowl. They outplayed Kansas City.
In that fourth quarter of that Super Bowl.
It was in the divisional round. I think Jimmy threw an interception, Eric Kendricks, and Kyle Shanahan just said, you know what? Screw this. We're just going to run the football. And they had the great running game, the unique running game with Deebo Samuel involved, the great offensive line. And they had to play a certain way.
So do you think that was the moment he realized that,
I can see it.
I'm going to need to
I can visualize 2 moments in my life watching football. One is Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl against the Chicago Bears. Remember that? The Bears, I think, took the opening kickoff. back for a touchdown. And the Colts got the football and they were going down the field, and Peyton Manning tried to push it a little bit against Lovie Smith's cover 2. And they literally put the camera on him. He threw an interception and he said, I got it. I know what I did wrong. And they were just going to play that cover 2. And he just murdered it the rest of the game, to the point that Brian Urlacher at the end of the game was screaming at his own sidelines, like, we got to get more aggressive. We got to change things up. He just sliced and diced him. That was moment 1. Moment 2 was Kyle Shanahan, that interception there at Kendricks. He said, you know what? This guy can't play. We're going to get to the Super Bowl in this specific way. And he did it. And he's been trying to replace him since. And I got to tell you, Jeff, and this is where I said, you go back to that Green Bay game with the upset, the special teams won it for San Francisco.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't
Garoppolo
JG.
was awful. Awful.
He wasn't really good the entire playoffs. I mean,
No.
to be honest, and again, I just think he's better than what people give him credit for. I just hate the whole, the Mina Kimes take. Jimmy Garoppolo's a terrible quarterback. Okay, well, let's push the buttons a bit. He's not terrible, but
he's a game manager. He's an average quarterback. I will say this about Jalen Hurts, though, bringing it back to the Eagles. People rightfully point out, and I say all the time, that they wanted Russell Wilson, they wanted Deshaun Watson. Now, I don't think the Eagles would have ever went to the contract Cleveland went to. So ultimately, I don't think even if he spoke to him, it would have mattered. But they wanted the player. They wanted that type of upgrade. But so people say, well, that's an insult to Jalen Hurts. No, it's not. They've also complimented him. They have no stinking interest in Jimmy G. They had no interest in Baker Mayfield. And you could argue
I don't want to either, and I like him. I just don't want him as Eagles quarterback.
Well, and they're more proven in theory than Jalen Hurts. So that's kind of a compliment for saying, all right, we want to get better, but we only want to get better if we can get the home run. Like we don't want some guy who's a lateral move or maybe
or marginally better. It's not enough. There's no reason to give up as many assets if we're required.
Yeah.
To be honest, that's when you get stuck with Sam Bradford, when you go for players like that.
Yeah. Which I think is a compliment to Jalen Hurts. So people miss that back end of it, in my opinion.
By the way, this is my favorite thing. This is an insult to Jalen Hurts. You think Jalen Hurts really cares what?
No, I know he doesn't. I know he doesn't.
Exactly. I mean, he's got A.J. Brown speak for him now, so it doesn't matter what Jalen Hurts says or does anymore.
No. And Jalen, because people get on me for criticizing Jalen. Jalen and I have a pretty good relationship. And I think because he thinks I'm fair, and I ask fair questions and I say fair things. But there are times you see him get frustrated. He'll shut down with the one-word answers. But as a whole, and I give credit to Nick Saban with this, because I hear the same thing about Mac Jones. I hear the same thing about Tua. He trains those guys well. And Jalen calls it rat poison. And rat poison can be bad. I think people assume it's criticism. But it can also be good, and that goes back to our opening of the show, Tone. If guys are blowing smoke up your you-know-what and saying how great you are, that's rat poison too. And Jalen's really, really, really good about
I still remember when I asked
Jalen
Hurts. Yeah, when I asked Jalen Hurts last year about rat poison, he goes, "You know what? Just don't buy into the hype. Your way." And I'm like, okay, that's to me that I guess that's how he means by rat poison. So that's exactly what it is. But I'll tell you what, if we're criticizing Jalen Hurts in Philly, you guys got to see the Tua takes down in Miami. It is brutal. It's man, I hope that kid has a good year because Buffalo fans are getting on. Patriots fans, I don't think we've seen a quarterback under any more pressure in the last 10 years to attack Viola in the Miami offense this year.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it from this perspective, all three Alabama quarterbacks right now are kind of under a microscope. Yes, the New England Patriots, they made it to the playoffs with Mac Jones, his first year starting, being a rookie, that was pretty exciting. But you saw the glaring difference between a guy like him and a guy like Josh Allen. You saw you saw the disparity in their talent and where they are in their careers. Obviously, Josh Allen has many more years under his belt, but Mac Jones, he looked a bit shaken in that game. He looked more flawed than he looked all season, in my opinion. And then Tua, he's a guy who's Mr. Dink and Dunk, the guy who's afraid to throw more than 20 yards down the field.
Well, you got to get Jody upset. Jody's a big Tua guy.
Hey, Jody, get well soon, my man.
Tua was third in the NFL in completion rate over 20 yards last year, behind Justin Herbert.
Hey, by the way,
I mean, Jalen Hurts was considered the most explosive quarterback, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean,
I'm still trying to figure out that you know what? I think I'm the guy who found out the explosive play stat, because you make that up. I'm like, it's not made up. It's on the NFL website.
Well, you can twist things any way you want. That's part of the problem. You know, Joe Banner always said about advanced, whatever you want to call it, advanced numbers analytics. And the Eagles were always at the forefront. Joe was a part of that. But he said, you know, I don't care about your numbers. Give me actionable information I can use. What's actionable? Like what gives me an advantage? And that's what the Eagles have done so well and a bit ahead of the curve. But real quick about Tua, to button up that topic, you know, people talk about the Eagles being disrespectful of Jalen Hurts for picking up the phone and saying, hey, Russell, will you talk to us? Hey, Deshaun, will you talk to us? Think about Miami. They agreed to trade for Deshaun Watson if he could settle the civil suits. That deal was done already. He knows that. They tried to get Tom Brady. They tried to give him part of the team.
They're still trying to get Tom Brady in a sense. That's not over.
Yeah, and he knows that. And, you know, they're doing everything humanly possible. And now the news comes out that Sean Payton has identified Miami as one of the places he would go to next year when he comes back. And he's going to be the coach of the Dolphins, the Cowboys. I would say it's Dolphins or Cowboys. They threw the Chargers in there as well. And I think it was a Miami Herald report. So if you're Tua and you're Mike McDaniel and you got Sean Payton looking over your shoulder, that's not a good situation.
Can you imagine Sean Payton and Justin Herbert together? Just think about that for a second.
Spooky.
Yeah.
Spooky, very much. But, you know, I don't know why there's this thought process that organizations aren't supposed to not only look out for their best interests, but also continuously look to upgrade. This is the NFL. You know, this is the NBA, where a team will sit on a contract for years and not do anything about it. In the NFL, if they pay you and you're not producing, they're very much willing to off that contract and find somewhere for you to go.
Hey, one of my favorite stories. Have I ever told you? Jody knows it. I don't know if you've heard it, Tone. Jeff, I don't know if you've heard it. My Adrian Peterson story, when I was covering the Vikings, and they drafted Adrian Peterson. And I don't know if you guys remember Chester Taylor, but he was a pretty good back.
Oh, yeah.
And I think I do.
Yeah. And he was coming off a 1,200-yard season, and he had, 50 catches out of the backfield. He was a well-rounded back. He was a good player. And it was a bad team at the time, obviously. I think they picked Adrian at number 7. And I asked one of the personnel guys at the time, I said, well, you got a lot of holes. Why are you taking a running back? You got Chester Taylor. And he looked at me, and this was not an insult to Chester Taylor, because he thought he was a good player. And he said, F Chester Taylor. This guy's different. And since that day, I've always called them FU players. There's certain FU players. And Jalen Hurts, I love you. I love you. I love you. Russell Wilson, FU player. Sorry, dude. If I can get Russell Wilson, doesn't mean I don't like you. But
I think Jalen can. And I think Jalen, someone who's considered to be one of the more rational, quarterbacks in the NFL. I think he's someone who would completely understand that transition. Russell Wilson, a guy who's proven, who's won before. But again, Russell Wilson is someone who hasn't won in quite some time. That's a conversation for another day. But Jeff, I wanted to shift gears just a little bit before we get you out of here. We have about I want to say about maybe 10 more minutes with you. Miles Sanders, again, talking about expectations, and me and John brought up a list, Eagles players who won't live up to the hype in 2022. Miles Sanders is one of those players on that list, and Miles Sanders is in one of those situations where if he does too well, he may not get the contract. He may not get the contract he wants from Philly. He may get it somewhere else, but may not be from Philly. If he doesn't do well enough, then he loses leverage. I personally believe he doesn't have too much leverage to begin with anyway. But what's your thoughts on Miles Sanders' situation as it stands today, and how do you think Howie Roseman will approach it entering the 2022 season and as the season progresses?
So I'm going to play the role of Miles Sanders' agent. I'm going to look up there's a stat out there, yards per touch. When Miles Sanders has started in the NFL since 2019 in yards per touch, his rookie year. When he does get the ball, he's very explosive. But the problem is, I don't know if he doesn't get the ball enough. I don't know if it's because he's injury prone. I guess it's injury prone, or it's the Eagles committee approach. But it just feels like now you just don't give that much money to a running back. And I feel Miles Sanders is one of those guys that when he does get the ball, he's productive. And last year, everybody likes to mention he didn't score a touchdown last year. But I'll point out to you, he averaged 5.5 yards a carry. And he averaged, it was around, I think it was around 6 yards per catch. So, I mean, maybe even higher than that. He's been a productive player when he gets the ball. It's just we have to determine, can this guy handle 200 touches a year? I believe he can. I believe he's done that. It's, do they feed him enough, or is this what he is? Just another running back, or is he a special player? And that's what the Eagles got to figure out.
Right, and real quick, John, sorry, and that's my thing, right? It's with him, the talent is clearly there. I was reading an article by Brendan Lee Gowton on Bleeding Green Nation, and he was indicating that Miles Sanders, he's one of the more frustrating players to watch because you see the talent, but there's moments where he just has boneheaded moments, behind the line of scrimmage. Maybe he picks the wrong hole, or maybe he gets quick dancing.
Runs out of bounds in the 4-minute offense.
Runs out of bounds in a 4-minute offense and gets benched.
Yeah.
You know who does that too? I got slammed pre-draft for this. I used to criticize Saquon Barkley for all that stuff. He's a generational running back. I'm like, let me tell you something. Like 2017 Fiesta Bowl, I'll tell you about the 4-minute offense of the dumb stuff. So it's clearly a Penn State thing coming from a Penn Stater. But yeah, hopefully my
you're going to get the Penn.
The key word is expectations, right? The key word is expectations. Miles Sanders is someone who may need to curb his expectations as well, because if you want to stay in Philly, because again, no matter how talented he may be, if I only get that talent for half the season, why would I ever pay you the going rate for what you're providing me? I would much rather pay you a team-friendly contract that I can get out of, worst case scenario, but at the same time, it gives you some level of security. So, John, you can hop in on this part as well. What do you think, Miles Sanders' expectations should be? Should he curb his expectations? How much leverage does he really have in negotiations?
Well, here's I don't know if you can believe that as a player, but I mean, there's a realistic, and I've talked about this a bunch on the show. I'm trying to figure out a path to where Miles Sanders can be here next year. And I don't see one outside of him getting hurt, right? And not having a big season, and people on the outside not wanting him, and the Eagles sort of do the Derek Barnett deal. Like, all right, we'll bring you back at 1 year, $4 million. Because if he finally has that 1,250-yard year, which he's not going to, they don't exist anymore in the NFL pretty much. He's going to get too much money. And if he has the typical 850-yard year, the Eagles are probably going to just want to, turn it over and go with the cost-effective route and the younger back with the less wear and tear and the less injury history. So, I'm at the point where, hey, if Miles go with the hot hand. And understand that if Miles is playing well, give him the football. He's not going to be here next year anyway. You don't have to worry about the wear and tear. It's a harsh way to look at things, but this is the NFL. We've seen it in the past. Guys on contract years, DeMarco Murray, maybe the biggest example in Dallas. Run him into the ground, and hey, good luck.
I'll tell you what's the toughest thing. This is what Miles Sanders reminds me of going into his contract year. Melvin Gordon with the Chargers. Completely different players, but Melvin Gordon scored a lot of touchdowns. Great in the red zone. He only averaged about 4.1, 4.2 yards per carry, and the Chargers had Austin Eckler. So they moved on, and Gordon's been a productive player in Denver, but he got like a 2-year, $16 million deal. And if we bring Miles Sanders back on something like that, do you think that's feasible?
I don't. Well, here's the thing. Here, the Eagles' offensive line is so good. We saw it last year. Miles led the NFL in yards per carry for running backs. He tied with Taylor and he tied with Chubb at 5.5. Only Jalen and Lamar Jackson had a higher rate, yards per carry. So he was effective, but everybody was effective. And from the eye test, a lot of people thought the offense was more effective when he was out. And that's a problem because when Jordan Howard has success and Boston Scott has success, I'm at the point where I think I can put Jeff Kerr behind this offensive line and get 4.5 yards a carry.
Maybe one.
And that's the way the Eagles are going to think. And they might even say, you know what? We got Kennedy Brooks. We can get 4.5 yards per carry from Kennedy Brooks, and we don't have to pay him anything. I can't necessarily disagree with them.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's going to be the biggest key to Miles Sanders, where he comes back or not. How much Kenny Gainwell progresses in year 2. If Kenny Gainwell can be that guy that he can average.
See, I don't think he's and I'll leave it here. Jeff Kerr at Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports. Reed Jeff there does a tremendous job. I don't think Kenny Gainwell's a bell cow back. I'm not talking Jonathan Taylor or Derrick Henry. I mean, a true RB1. I think he's a great third down back, hurry up back. Why mess with that? That's what he is. That's what he is.
He's not the same type of player, but he kind of reminds me of a Corral Buckholder in a sense. Like you put him in and he's going to make a play. That's what I kind of think of him as. Not the same type of player, obviously, but the same. Like he comes at, like you said, John, third down. You give him the ball, he's going to get a first down for you. And that's what I like about the kid. I think he's got a bright future in the NFL just on that merit. By the way, so my big radio week will probably be next week anyway with quarterback. My quarterback coach duo list comes out tomorrow. The top 10. Boy, does that generate controversy every single year. How do you leave Tom Brady off? Well, I have a rule. He is a new head coach, so I can't rank him. So people ask
you can already start 2023 and go with Sean Payton, Tom Brady. How's that in Miami?
It won't count because
new. Yeah. All right. 2024. He'll keep playing. 2024.
Well, last year, I still get ragged on a bit by Rams fan. They get it because they know the rules. They actually read. But they're like, how did you leave Stafford and McVay out last year? I'm like, hey, I put specifically on there. I would rank Stafford and McVay, but I haven't seen Stafford throw a pass under McVay yet. But I said, I expect really good things. And
you're expecting, Jeff, you're expecting a lot if you're expecting people to read. You're expecting a lot.
Oh, man, absolutely.
Fans do read.
No, they do. And I love them. And read at JAKIBSports.com, by the way. Read it.
Definitely. Make sure you guys check out JAKIBSports.com. Hey, Jeff, I have one final question for you, and then we're going to get you out of here, man. Again, we appreciate you for coming on. Let's have a little fun with this final one. What's your over? You taking an over under on Miles Sanders, 1,000 yards, 1,500 over under?
Under. I'll go under.
Yeah,
I think
we've seen 3 years. I gotta go under. Gotta go
under.
He is the only Eagles running back ever to have 750 plus his first 3 years in the league. The only one. Yeah. We've had some great running backs here. Will Montgomery.
I will say this. I will say this. If Miles is out there for 17 games, he will be over 1,000 yards. Can he stay healthy?
That's it.
That's
He's out
basically 50 yards a game, 55 yards a game. If he can't do that, then this we have.
Well, if Miles played, I think I did the numbers, Jeff. If he played 17 games last season, he would have finished 6th in the league in rushing. Would everybody have been happy with that? I think so.
Yeah.
I will say that
the second season as well.
Miles Sanders scores a touchdown this year.
I'm going to go over. I'm going to go over.
I'll go over on that one. I actually think Miles can get 1,500 yards from scrimmage this year if he's healthy. I think that's very doable.
I don't think he's going to get an opportunity to catch the ball. I think that's
I
Kenny
think
Gainwell's
he's lost that
stuff.
privilege.
That's
That's the frustrating part of his game. He should be better at catching the ball. I blame James Franklin and a lot of people at Penn State for that.
He's just not good. He's not good at it. His biggest problem is not the hands, although Deuce Staley,
I think it's more the route running personally.
Yeah, it's the route. It's not only the route running as an outlet receiver, and this used to frustrate Doug and Deuce. He's not where he's supposed to be. And you can't, this, Jeff, you can't, rule number one, you can't fool the quarterback. You got to be where you're supposed to be. And too often he's not where he's supposed to be as an outlet receiver. And Kenny Gainwell is always where he's supposed to be.
The big Carson Wentz interception to Sloan, what's the guy's name on Cleveland? The linebacker. I always forget his last name.
Taki.
I think Miles was out of position on that one too.
Yeah,
but
he was.
If I went back and looked, Carson made a terrible, terrible decision. But if I had to make a bet, Miles was probably out of position on that. But I still blame Wentz for that more than him.
Well, remember, a lot of times with quarterbacks as well, when you're going to your back, you're not even looking. You're like, in other words, if you're Tom Brady, I'm looking at, Mike Evans or Gronk or Chris Godwin. And then bang, I'm dumping it off to the back. A lot of times those guys that's where he is. I know that's where my back is. That's what I'm saying. You can't fool the quarterback. They know where the running back, the outlet receiver, is supposed to be. And it's kind of a field thing a bunch of times. You can't fool the quarterback.
But by the way, before I sign off, I got to stick up for Gunn here. So everybody wants to get on him for that report, who,
first of all, he's just telling what somebody told him.
Exactly. And people didn't see the whole quote. But this is why I don't take practice anything seriously, from positive or negative. Nothing drives me more insane than training camp stats. It's practice. It's practice. Guess what? Jeff Kerr got 279 practicing bowling last night. I did not shoot that in the game because I was working on stuff. Oh, by the way, I've also shot 120s in practice working on stuff.
If 7
any level of sports knows this.
Yeah, if 7-on-7s meant anything, Sam Bradford would be in the Hall of Fame.
No, exactly. Well, Sam Bradford would be the best quarterback in the National Football League. He'd probably still be quarterback at the Eagles because he had the greatest preseason performance I've ever seen out.
Oh, yeah. That one,
man, definitely. Yeah. Hey, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on to the show last minute. You have been a treat, my man. We appreciate your contributions. Again, make sure you guys go check out Jeff Kerr on CBS.com. He does an amazing job for that platform. And also, he pinch hits for JAKIB Sports quite often. So, Jeff, we appreciate
and stay tuned for exciting news next week. That's all I'll say.
Stay tuned for exciting news. A lot of big news coming next week. It's going to be a big year for all of us, you guys. But, Jeff, we appreciate you so much, my man. You take care and enjoy the rest of your staycation, all right?
That sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
all right,
Jeff.
Jeff. Take care. Oh, man, you guys, that was Jeff Kerr, CBSSports.com. Make sure you guys go check him out. Hey, John, it's a lot of good points were brought up at the end of the day. Miles, he's not really in the most optimal situation. And Miles also is going to be a victim of being a rotational back with Kenny Gainwell, Boston Scott in various situations. So that over-under of him getting, over 1,000 yards, I would probably take the under with you as well.
Well, the only reason I take the under is because Miles hasn't proven he could stay healthy. If he's healthy,
and that's my thing as well. If he's healthy, he's a 1,000-yard back every season. If he's healthy,
yeah. If he's healthy, he's going to be at 1,100 yards, something like that. That's where he would have been last year at about 1,100 yards. Not 1,250, but those guys don't exist anymore. Nick Chubb, Really, if you go back 3 years, you have Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Dalvin Cook. That's it. Oh, Christian McCaffrey. That's it.
He was
5 guys.
Five guys. I think Christian McCaffrey shot his low. But you guys, we have Ed Kracz coming on the show in about the next 15 to 20 minutes. So make sure you guys keep it locked on Birds 365. Smash that like button. Make sure you guys subscribe if you're new to JAKIB Sports, and also make sure you guys share the content as well. He's John McMullen. I'm Tone DeShields the second in for the sick Jody Mack. You guys are locked in on Birds 365. Stay tuned.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
What's good, people? You guys are watching on your daily dose of Birds 365. He's John McMullen, and I am Tone DeShields the second, and for Jody Mack. And so far, so good, John. How you feeling?
So far, so good. How about you, Tone, in the hosting chair? Is it exciting for you? Is it everything you thought it would be?
It's pretty surreal, if I'm being honest, because I've been a fan of this show for a long time, right? And then, reaching out, shooting my shot with JAKIB Sports, and all of a sudden now I'm behind the scenes getting things done, working with guys like you, and you guys have been more than welcoming. And like you said, my first time in the host seat, long term, for a full program, and it's pretty exciting. I'm definitely not going to hold back my excitement at all. I'm not going to hold it back. I'm ecstatic.
All right. I'm glad. I don't want to disappoint you. So.
No, you can never do that, John. Never. But what? Another thing that didn't disappoint me about you was your articles as of late. You've been writing your training camp previews, right? And one article that stood out to me was your most recent one, and that was the offensive line, but in particular, the tackles, right? Now, that's a very interesting conversation to me because you have a guy in Andre Dillard who most likely won't be here next year because of the value he has, and he's going to command. He's going to test his value. He's not going to waste his time, being behind Durham Milano, for another season. He knows he's a first-round pick. He knows he's dedicated himself to his body and improving. But another side of the conversation is you have guys who are aging, like Elaine Johnson, who's 32, and even including some of the interior guys, Jason Kelsey. This offensive line, they are aging, but I think the Philadelphia Eagles are doing a pretty good job at weaving in the youth while still maintaining the veteran leadership and slowly but surely phasing out old guys and cross training young guys, right? But I feel like something that doesn't get talked about enough, just as the offensive line is beginning to age, so is our offensive line coach, Jeff Stoutland. Now look, he's not a dinosaur at all, but he isn't getting any younger. Have you heard anything through the grapevine about a potential succession plan from Jeff Stoutland?
No, not. I mean, there was, from a health standpoint, there was a concern. He had to go to the hospital at one, I think it was the Giants game. And there was, a little bit of concern, but turned out to be just a little bit of a scary situation, but Jeff ended up being fine. I think before the season, if you remember, Tone, there was a report from a very respected college reporter that Jeff was going to go back to Alabama and where he'd coached under Nick Saban. And to be honest, that's probably where he would have gone, if the Eagles didn't talk him into returning. Because remember, Doug Peterson got fired and not in the best way, to be honest. And Jeff was very loyal to Doug and vice versa. So they had to convince him to come back. And they were able to do so. And now I think everything is sort of, peachy keen again, so to speak. And he likes Nick, and everybody who meets Nick tends to like him. So you don't have any issues from that standpoint. But, how are you going to replace Jeff Stoutland? One of the things, this is one of the best offensive assistants in the league. Forget about, offensive line coach, any positional coach, running backs, receivers, tight ends, whatever you want to throw out there. I'd even throw coordinators in there.
Right, and not to cut you off, but I think what makes Jeff Stoutland so great, like you said, he's not just one of the best offensive line coaches; he's one of the best assistants, and that's because he's had some of the most clear-cut examples, or some of the most clear-cut, I guess you'll say, he has the most proven record of developing guys. There's no, I can't think of any offensive line coach in the NFL that has a track record like him when it comes to developing guys and preparing guys for all situations.
Yeah, one of the things, Roy Isband is a name a lot of fans probably don't know, is the assistant offensive line coach under Jeff Stoutland. And obviously he's gotten to learn under, what we just said, one of the best offensive line coaches in the league, one of the best assistant coaches in the league. I'm surprised the Eagles have been able to keep him, because if I'm one of these other teams that can't figure out how to develop offensive linemen, and there's a lot of them, like, why don't you go get Jeff Stoutland's assistant? That's been a little bit of a surprise for me, to be honest, that the Eagles have been able to keep Roy. So, right now he's the guy who would replace Jeff Stoutland, but you can't replace Jeff Stoutland. You can't. I mean, there's certain things, and you saw it really with the Eagles when they won Super Bowl 52. That's what happens with success, right? You win, you lose Frank Reich, you lose John DiFilippo. It's not the same. You do your best. You just can't make copies. You go back to Andy Reid, his first Eagles coaching staff. I think people forget just how many, John Harbaugh, Ron Rivera, Leslie Frazier, on and on and on, on his first staff.
Quite a list. It's quite a list.
And yeah. And when you start to lose guys, right, it doesn't, it's not as good. I mean, it's just common sense. And that's one of the things with this coaching staff as a whole, I've kind of been talking about. It's very rare that you're able to keep together an entire coaching staff because guys either get fired, they get hired, they get promotions. The Eagles have been able to keep it together for this will be the second consecutive year. And this is it, Tone. I mean, they're either going to live up to expectations, and guys like Gannon or Steichen are going to leave to get other jobs, or they're going to fail to live up to expectations, and guys are going to be fired, to be honest. And guys are going to be used as scapegoats. But here's that 99 staff. I was trying to bring it up as I was talking. So you have Sean McDermott, Brad Childress, David Culley, Pat Shermer, Ron Rivera, Leslie Frazier, Steve Spagnuolo, John Harbaugh. And that's not even bringing up Jim Johnson, who never wanted to be a head coach at that point. Or Rod Dowhower, who was the offensive coordinator, was a head coach before he came with Andy. I mean, that's one of the great coaching staffs of all time.
And that Andy Reid coaching tree is immaculate. Harbaugh.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
It's crazy to believe that those guys were once in this room. And, of course, hindsight is 2020. Who would have thought those guys would be who they are today, right? But, I brought up Andre Dillard earlier, and I want to get this topic out of the way before we get Ed Kracz in here. He's going to be here very soon, you guys, in our 9:20 slot. Andre Dillard, what's his market? Because if you ask me, I think this is how it's going to play out. I believe that the Eagles are going to hold on to him for as long as they can, and they're going to wait for one of these teams to become desperate at the offensive line. Injuries happen, and then they're going to hold on to him for as long as they can, and then they're going to leverage him because I highly doubt the way Howie Roseman moves, his history, he's not going to lose that young man for nothing. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think two things. I think, early in the season, the Eagles think they're going to be a contender, so I think they value him as a potential backup. But this will go all the way to the trade deadline, Tony, because and that's usually about Halloween time. I think it's early November this year. The Eagles should know, are we contenders? Where are we? He might be playing by then. We don't know about injuries. That's part of it as well. We talked about Lane Johnson. We talked about the age, reconstructive ankle surgery, anxiety issues. A lot of people don't realize Jordan Mailata, very young player, but he's 6'8", he's 380 pounds. He's had back problems. That's probably not going away. So there's at times, and he missed a couple games last season. So I think Howie Roseman values the depth. It's a good player. He doesn't want to give him away. If somebody loses a left tackle in training camp and they offer, pie in the sky, day 2 pick, second round pick, I think he'd trade him. Otherwise, he's going to hold on to him as long as possible. And he might have to make a decision November 1st, because even if you talk about a guy leaving in free agency, when people talk about comp picks, well, that means you have to lose more free agents than you sign. So number one, in other words, you're not getting a comp pick just because you lose a free agent. And because the salary cap is coming up, I don't think the Eagles are going to consider themselves in a position to where they're worried about comp picks, because they're going to want to bring players in because they're going to have room to do it. And there's a lot of things play into this. Jalen Hurts. Are they going to extend Jalen Hurts? Then maybe they're not in a position. So that's way down the line. But unless he gets something of value for Andre Dillard, he's not going to move him until November 1st, November 2nd, whatever the trade deadline is.
You heard the man. He's John McMullen. I'm Tone DeShields II in for Jody Mack. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new to JAKIB Sports. And also make sure you guys check out JAKIBsports.com. We have a lot of content on there. Yours truly, John McMullen, is killing it right now with his articles, giving you guys a full in-depth behind-the-scenes look at the Philadelphia Eagles. We have Ed Kracz coming up next on Birds 365. Keep it locked.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community, a sports roundup for the locals, and the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake a mom. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the polls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Good morning. This is Birds 365. I'm Tone DeShields II. He's John McMullen. And I am in for the sick Jody Mack. Make sure you guys continue to smash that like button. We are here by the one and only Ed Kracz from Sports Illustrated. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, Tone, John, good to see you guys.
Ed Kracz, good to see you, buddy. SI.com, Eagles Today. Follow Ed on Twitter at KratzE. Where should we start today, Ed? We'll probably do our top 25 best Eagles players over at Sports Illustrated that you and I have been putting together. And I got a bone to pick with you at number 5 because that was my number 1 player.
Mm-hmm.
And he only fell at number 5 because of the disrespect that Ed Kracz showed Dallas Goedert. Come on. How do you have Dallas Goedert so far down that list?
Yeah, you gotta explain that one to me, Ed. I gotta be honest.
Well, at least it's not N'Kobe Dean that we're talking about. I mean, that was a big convo last
Jody
week.
Today. So
yeah, no Jody. So now I got to deal with the Dallas Goedert disrespect. But no, hey, look, I think top 5. That's not a bad spot to be.
That's
if you're
not
Dallas
a bad
Goedert.
spot. Obviously, I'm just playing.
Yeah, I just, I mean, he's going to be a big part of the offense, obviously. 830 yards receiving last year. I mean, he could. Everybody talks about Brown or Smith going over 1,000 yards. I mean, Goedert could be one of those players that goes over 1,000 yards this year. And if he is, I will have him ranked higher than where I had him in my poll. I know you ranked him first, John, and I have no problem with that. I just think that there's another player out there that has not been revealed who belongs in that top spot.
Now, there's a lot of good players on this. There's a lot of guys that are in the conversation, and that's part of the positive as we get closer and closer to training camp, is the fact that this roster looks pretty good, pretty deep. And, I say from 2 to 53, this looks like one of the best rosters in the NFL. The difference between the Eagles and the other contenders in the NFC, Los Angeles, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, quarterback. Is this a championship level roster if Jalen Hurts carries his water as a, say top 15 quarterback in this league?
Yeah, I think the potential is there to be a championship, at least a division championship team. Whether or not they can push to the playoffs or, through the playoffs and win a game or two there, I'm not sure. I think it depends on how they all come together. There are some new players on this team. I know it's the second year for Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon on the defensive side. But they only had 5 OTA practices. I know they were scheduled for 6, but they canceled the last one and went bowling or some kind of bonding thing, shot free throws or had the rock, paper, scissors tournament. I'm not sure, but they only had 5 and they didn't practice real long. And it was only 7-on-7s. And, we're going to see more of that in training camp too. I don't think they're going to, do a whole lot of hitting. So it's going to be dependent on how they come together. I think if they're going to be a championship team, they have to get these pieces playing together and in sync. Remember 2011, I hate to say the dream team, but that never happened for that group of guys. So this is a good roster. In fact, I was looking through some potential camp battles as sort of a preview leading into camp. And, there's nothing really for the starting jobs to battle, right? I mean, it's all going to be backup spots is where the battles are going to lie. Maybe you could say right guard is a battle to start between Ciamalu and Driscoll. I think Ciamalu is going to be the starter there. But, when you look at a roster that's that deep where there's no battles to be the starter, but only battles to be the backups. I mean, that's a pretty good roster right there.
Well, let's talk about those battles before you jump in, Tone. Right guard, I think you're right. One concern about, when we talked to Isaac in the spring, he mentioned he was out there in OTAs but remember, it was all 7-on-7, as you mentioned it. So there's no teamwork. Obviously, there's no hitting. You're not allowed to hit.
Right.
But he mentioned he was not cleared. He's not fully cleared, and he might not be fully cleared for day one of training camp. So there's a little bit of opportunity for Jack Driscoll, who, as we know, is a Nick Sirianni favorite. So that position, I want to get your thoughts on, but also the third receiver spot, which essentially is a starting spot, depending if you go 11, 12 personnel. And I think it was our buddy Chris Franklin who brought this up. So I thought it was a great point. I want to run it by you. Everyone just kind of defaults to Quez Watkins. It might be counterintuitive, but it might be better for the Eagles if Zach Pascal's playing more, because if he's playing more, that means they're ahead late in games and they're trying to run the football to close the game out. In other words, if Quez is out there, you're trying to throw the football, you're probably behind, you're trying to catch up. I thought it was an interesting point Chris made. So those two particular positions, right guard and third wide receiver.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful not to become too predictable. When defenses see Pascal on the field, they're going to say, okay, let's look for the run here because he's the blocking guy. And if Quez is on the field, hey, they're going to throw because he's the pass catching guy. So, Sirianni's not going to let that happen. Where, we saw last year with JJ Arcega-Whiteside, he was really, he wasn't on the field much other than the block. So, they didn't want to become too predictable with him. And they had to show some passing looks. But, I think Pascal and Watkins, it's going to be interesting to see who gets the the lion's share of the reps there because they are both the battling for that third spot. And I just think that, the history with Sirianni and Pascal is going to let Pascal play. I think they're going to probably end up splitting reps. And I think that they're going to throw it when both are on the field and they're going to run it when both are on the field. That's just the way I think it's going to be. And, getting back to your question about Driscoll and Ciamalo, and it was interesting to hear Isaac say he had a second surgery to remove some hardware in February that was put in to deal with the Lisfranc surgery he had in the fall. But is Driscoll going to be healthy? We haven't talked to him this OT. I mean, he 2 years in a row, he's been in the league. He's ended his season on IR. He's not exactly a bastion of good health either. So is he going to be healthy when camp starts? And if those two guys are down, who's going to be your right guard? Suo Peta, Josh Stills, who I like a lot from West Virginia, or maybe it's Sills. Maybe he's the guy. But one of those guys better be healthy, once camp gets underway and starts rolling along, because I don't know what's after those two guys.
Yeah. I harken back to you and John's top 25 list. And again, number 5, Dallas Goedert. I'm completely satisfied with that spot, right? But I want to take it a step further. Dallas Goedert is someone who, from the very beginning, we knew he had talent, but he was always playing behind Zach Ertz, for the majority of his career, the first 2 years of his career, and most of his career. And this past season, it wasn't until about maybe week 6, week 7 where he started to get number 1 targets. I think Zach Ertz was traded after that Tampa Bay game. So it begs the question, what if Goedert was the number 1 from the very beginning? He ended the season with about 840 yards by being the number 1 after week 7. Most of his yards came from week 7 and beyond. But what's this young man's ceiling truly? How great can he be? Because if you really try to hit his pace at the rate he was putting up yards, at his production was amazing for a guy who only started getting first team reps after week 6, week 7. So you guys have him ranked in your top 5. And John, you can answer this as well. What do you guys believe his ceiling is, and what's his floor? And what comparisons could you guys make across the league?
I would say with Goedert that, he had those 2 games last year, back-to-back over 100-yard games. I think it was against the Jets and then the Commanders. He went for 105 and then 135. But then we saw other games where he was, 2 catches for 23 yards or 3 for 38. So, I would like to see a little more consistency in the targets that they give him. Now, of course, it's not going to work out that way. I know every week is based on the game plan and who you're playing, but I would like to see him at least get 5-6 targets every game, maybe 7, get him in that range. But, you have other mouths to feed in this offense, so it's going to be difficult for him to get, 10.
That's the problem
in the game. Yeah, it's going to be tough for him.
And real quick, just to add in for you, John, just to add more context, I know a lot of people are excited about the Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown chemistry. I'm more excited about how Dallas Goedert can benefit from having a guy like AJ Brown around, and I'm more excited to see that Dallas Goedert, Jalen Hurts chemistry, be taken to another level, because I firmly believe Dallas Goedert has the talent to be the focal point of this passing attack.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's what I was going to bring up, and Ed knows this as well, and I can say it, but behind the scenes, and then Nick said it in front of the camera, so I can say it now. He would always say the offense, the game planning starts with 6 and 88, which was Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert in the passing game. Last year, once Zach Ertz left, and it became, as you mentioned, sort of Dallas Goedert's job alone. And I think as the season wore on, it became clear that Jalen was more comfortable with Dallas Goedert, and it became sort of 88 and 6. But now the problem is AJ's number 1 now. AJ, it's going to start with AJ, and I think they're going to start the season. It's going to be AJ. It's going to be Devontae, then it's going to be Dallas. Now, maybe that changes, but, A.J. Brown's presence might make things a little bit more difficult when it comes to the targets for Dallas Goedert. Doesn't mean he's not going to be as good as a player. The Eagles have just gotten better. And I think, there's a guy who used to work for the Eagles on Twitter. Ed knows it, and everybody should follow him. He's at The Honest NFL. Tremendous follow on Twitter. He put up something from Sports Info Solutions, which our buddy Matt Manicherian's also on the show. Dallas Goedert, this is what unbelievable to me, was atop the entire NFL when it came to blocking efficiency. Better than every single offensive lineman, never mind tight ends. Now, he doesn't block as much. Offensive linemen, that's their job. Dallas only does it on occasion. But
John,
when he's asked to do it.
Can you explain that stat as far as blocking efficiency for those who may not understand?
Well, it's just, one of the advanced snaps. So basically they look at, they look at the film and they grade what you're supposed to do on a particular play from the efficiency standpoint. Number one in the entire league was Dallas Goedert. Number two was Creed Humphrey from the Chiefs, which is pretty unbelievable.
Wow.
As a rookie. But it just blew me away. It just blew me away. And that's why I look at Dallas Goedert as a pure football player. And you were saying, what's his ceiling? Well, there's George Kittle, there's Mark Andrews, there's Dallas Goedert at tight ends in the NFL, in my perspective. Now, Travis Kelce, great receiver, tremendous receiver, but he can't block like those guys. He's just a great player, but tight ends aren't as valuable as obviously quarterbacks, wide receivers, different positions, offensive tackles. But man, as a pure football player, and that's where I went with our list, Ed's and I list, he's phenomenal player. And I think people, if anything, he's a little bit underrated.
Here's something on Goedert too, in terms of the odds makers. Their Bet Online released some odds yesterday, and Dallas Goedert, they have him for 700.5 receiving yards, the over-under line for that, and then 5 touchdowns. Now, 830 he went for last year, but again, like John said, A.J. Brown's your number one. I think Goddard's going to drop down and, maybe, into that third part of that offense, but we don't know on a week-to-week basis how they are going to attack defenses. So he could have a larger role one week and maybe not so great, the following week because of the way the defenses are lining up. But the one thing that I think with Goedert, Jalen Hurts, one question about him is throwing the ball over the middle.
Yeah.
He seems to hesitate doing that. And I think that's where Goddard's going to have to make his living this year, is over the middle against the linebacker, matched up against the linebacker or even a safety, because defenses are going to have to concern themselves with guarding the perimeter with Brown and Smith. And they're going to have to watch out for the slot with Watkins or Pascal or Rager, whoever you're talking about there. But Jalen Hurts has to prove that he can be consistent throwing that ball over the middle.
And I'm glad you brought that up. Let's stay there for a second. Sorry to cut you off. I like where you're going with this because we talked about Dallas Goedert and Hurts' chemistry, that trust building as the season went. As the season progressed, Goedert became the guy, right? And Goedert made his living all over the field, outside the numbers, inside the numbers, and Hurts threw plenty of balls at him that weren't the greatest, but he had trust that Goedert will get it done. One ball in particular that I can think of is the Washington game. I think it was a third down. Hurts just threw it in the air. It was a prayer, and Goedert somehow brought it down and was able to sustain the drive. Now, I bring it up to say, how much will trust be a factor in terms of Jalen Hurts improving his efficiency in the middle of the field between the numbers? Because again, we know that we know the numbers indicate most of his throws happen outside the numbers. I believe over 70% of his throws were outside the numbers, something like that. I'm not entirely sure.
Right.
But how much will trust play a factor in Jalen Hurts increasing his efficiency or just his amount of reps being thrown to the middle of the field? And can that trust between him and Dallas Goedert make him a little bit more willing to make those throws?
Yeah, I think his trust with Goedert is fine. Maybe it has to do more with trusting himself and trusting his arm.
I was just about to say that, Ed. He's got to trust himself.
Right, and trust what he sees. Again, Sirianni's talked about this, is the longer you play in an offense, the more you're able to see what a defense is doing to you. And so I think he has to trust, really. I'm sure he trusts his athletic ability and his arm strength, but I think he has to trust what he's seeing to be able to make that throw over the middle. He doesn't want to throw it over the middle to Goedert and, not see a safety pinching down in a double team fashion and then throwing an interception. So I think Hurts has to trust himself and what he's seeing in order to take advantage of Goedert, who should be open on many plays this season over the middle.
Great follically challenged minds think alike. Exactly what I was going to say. Ed Kracz, you are a brilliant, brilliant man.
Absolutely.
You can't have two better targets in the middle of the field than A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert. Two just big, massive targets. And, Jalen Hurts' passing charts to date should be sponsored by Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, they're ridiculous.
Hole in the middle.
Yeah. Big, giant hole in the middle. It's got to change. And he's got to trust himself, because if that were Tom Brady with those two guys, my God, you can't have better targets in the middle of the field. He's got to trust himself. Ed's exactly right.
Yeah. And, you bring up A.J. Brown over the middle. I mean, that's a good point, because I think we all talk about Brown on the outside, but he can play in the slot too.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll, hopefully we'll see motion. I mean, we saw games last year where Sirianni didn't do any motioning with his offensive pieces. I mean, I think you got to move guys pre-snap, move them around the line. And I think we'll see Brown play some slot, and then we'll see Watkins on the outside or Pascal on the outside. But I think that's going to be one of the exciting parts of this offense, is because you have so much flexibility now, and you have to take advantage of it if you're Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen, who's the one going to be calling the plays.
Yeah. That coaching staff, you bring up Shane and the play calling. It's rare in the modern NFL, Ed, that you bring back your entire coaching staff completely intact for a second consecutive season. And from my perspective, I've been thinking about this. With the expectations, it's not coming back the same next year, because one of two things is going to happen. The Eagles are going to live up to expectations, and Gannon or Steichen or some of these other coaches, Brian Johnson, Kevin Patullo, are going to get promotions outside of the organization. Jonathan Gannon almost did already. On the other hand, if they don't live up to expectations, Jeffrey Lurie is going to come looking for Mike Rowe and Carson Walsh. He's going to want a scapegoat, and it won't be back together from that perspective. Eagles have to take advantage of this continuity, this small window of continuity with this coaching staff.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, yeah, it's rare when you see an entire staff come back intact year to year. And you're right. If the Eagles don't live up to expectations, there'll be some heads will roll, so to speak. And if they do, then these guys are going to get promoted probably outside the organization. But they have to take advantage of that. And I'll take it even one step further, as you have a quarterback who's still on a rookie contract. You're not blowing up your salary cap to pay a quarterback. And this is when we saw the Eagles win their Super Bowl, was when they were paying Carson Wentz the rookie scale. And, I know he got them to the number one seed, Wentz did, and then Foles took it from there. But I think, you have Jalen Hurts here still on his rookie deal, and everybody talking about him, getting this big extension if he lives up to expectations, and then he'll make $30 million, $35 million a year, somewhere in that neighborhood. So you have to take advantage of that too, with a quarterback playing on still a rookie deal. Because once the quarterback starts consuming, 15% of your salary cap, then you really have some harder decisions to make. So let's see him take advantage of that as well. The quarterback rookie pay and the coaching staff intact for a second straight year. Two things they do need to take advantage of.
Hey, Ed, while you're here, I had to pick your brain since we brought up the coaching staff, right? Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator. I want to shift gears to the defense side of the ball for a little bit while we still have you. Jonathan Gannon. His defense has to force turnovers. And let's be totally honest. The Eagles historically, the past few years, the past handful of years, have not been one of the better teams when it's come to forcing turnovers. The best year we've had in quite some time was the 2017 year, and that was when we went to the Super Bowl. So clearly, wins or turnovers translate into wins. I believe there's a stat out there where it says the Eagles went 2-5 when we didn't force when we didn't force any takeaways, and we were 7-4 when we did. So the numbers clearly indicate that when we force turnovers, when we force the defense into mistakes, we have a better chance of winning. On top of that, you begin to flip the field. How important will field position be for Jalen Hurts and his development and progression as a quarterback, and also proving that he can be the guy in the future? Because let's be honest, I'm unsure if Hurts is at a point in his career where he can regularly sustain 80-yard drives.
Right.
So I'm just curious what your thoughts are in terms of Jonathan Gannon's defense forcing takeaways and how that can translate to Jalen Hurts' production.
Well, yeah, obviously, the shorter the field you have to score touchdowns, the better you are. It's hard to go 75, 80 yards consistently over 12 plays without making a mistake somewhere along the line. So, yeah, there's two parts to that. It's the turnover aspect, and I think the Eagles were kind of at zero in that giveaway takeaway department. Last year they didn't give more away or take more away. I would like to see them be on the positive side of that and have more takeaways than giveaways, obviously. And I think some of the things they did with his defense leads you to believe that that could happen. Adding a James Bradbury at the other corner now, being able to pressure a quarterback. Again, this is all on paper. It looks great on paper. They have to go out and prove it. But, if you can force fumbles with sacks or punch a ball out from a running back or intercept the pass and flip the field, that's huge. But that's the first part of it, the takeaways. And then the second part is your return game. Your punting game and your punt return game. You have to be able to punt the ball and pin a team deep. We'll see if Aaron Sippis can do that. Struggled late last year in the second half of the season. And then who's going to return kicks for this team? Who's going to give them the best chance to, pick up 10 yards field position on a return or field the ball instead of having it bounce and, gain another 20 yards? I don't think Jalen Reagor is consistent enough to do that. So we're going to see. That's when we talked about camp battles to start the show. That's an area to watch, is who's going to emerge as the punt returner for this team. Can anybody do better than Jalen Reagor and flip that field, help flip the field a little bit? The defense can do it with turnovers, very important, but I think the special teams needs to do it as well.
We're getting closer and closer to training camp, Ed, so it's becoming clearer and clearer that Jalen Reagor is still going to be here. Mm-hmm. Andre Dillard as well. Those two guys, and add in anybody else you want as well, maybe even Isaac Seumalo. By the time training camp is over, by the time it's September 11th in Detroit, Jalen Reagor, Andre Dillard, are they still going to be here? Is anybody else in that conversation to be potentially moved as well?
Well, here's the thing. The Eagles don't have to make a trade now. Remember, coming out of the draft, we're thinking, okay, they don't have a safety. They don't have a cornerback to play opposite Darius Slay. They need to trade somebody. And we all thought, okay, Dillard, Reagor, maybe Seumalo, these guys make the most sense. But they since signed James Bradbury on May 18th, I think it was. Jaquiski Tartt, the safety, came on June 20th. And now all of a sudden, where do you need help? I don't see it. I don't see the hole in the roster where you need to move one of these guys to bring somebody in. Now, that could change if something catastrophic happens injury-wise during camp. And a hole were to open up, then maybe you can be more aggressive in trying to trade these guys. But unless somebody's going to give you a conditional, second-round pick for Dillard or third-round pick or something good for Reagor, I don't see them going anywhere. I think they're going to be here to start the year. I don't think either one of them will be cut. Now, maybe Howie changes his mind and decides to give them away because someone like a Britton Covey, who's trying to win a job as an undrafted free agent at receiver, rises up and looks so good, they're like, we can't cut him and keep Reagor. So maybe they try to trade Reagor for a 6th-round pick. They cut bait and move on. But that's the only way I see it happening. If some undrafted free agent rises up, like a tackle, like a Coyote Owasika, who you want to put in the lineup somewhere, second year with the team now as an undrafted free agent. I mean, then maybe that forces Howie into thinking, you know what, we can't afford to keep a Dillard or a Rager at the expense of letting one of these young guys go. So I need to do something, and I'll take the best offer out there. That's the only way I see it happening. But as far as a need, I don't think they need to trade anybody with this roster.
He's Ed Kracz from SportsIllustrated.com, Eagles Today. Ed, this is my final question, and then I'll pass over to John. And let's make it a little fun. What's more likely to happen? Jalen Rager catching 3 touchdowns or Marcus Epps catching 3 interceptions?
Man, I think Epps is going to be the X factor this year. I really do. I think he's going to be pretty good and surprise some people. Now, you know, I'm a pretty optimistic guy, and I probably would have said Rager. I probably would have said Rager last year, catches 3 touchdowns. But man, I just don't see that this year. But I can see Epps having 3 interceptions. I really could. I like Marcus Epps maybe more than some people do, and I know the body of work isn't there, but I'm on board with Epps, and I'm kind of off the Jalen Rager ship right now. Last year, like I said, I would have said, yeah, 3 touchdowns for Rager. He's going to do it. But I would say Epps 3 interceptions, not in a game, but through the course
of course. The whole season, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
All right. Read si.com/NFL/Eagles. Check out our top 25 list. We will be at number 4 today. I got to get on that after the show. And the final 3 will be coming up in the ensuing days. So I'll do an either or. What is more likely to happen, Ed Kracz? The Eagles putting up the link to apply for training camp credentials for the Eagles winning Super Bowl 50. What are we at? I don't even know what we're at. Which one's more likely?
Well, I'm going to go with the credentials. I mean, sooner or later, we have to figure that out, right? Yeah, so I'll go credentials. I mean, but listen, nobody thought the Eagles were going to win a Super Bowl in 2017, and they did.
That's true. That's true.
I know I didn't.
I certainly didn't either. So, you know, those things can sneak up on you. But I think the Eagles have a good roster. I think if they stay healthy and get some things to go their way, they can make a push for a Super Bowl bid. But we'll see. Again, let's see how this team comes together in training camp and in the preseason and then coming out of the gate. Very important. Can't start 2-5. You got to come out hot, and everybody says, oh, it's a soft schedule. I don't think the Vikings are a soft game when they open the home season on a Monday night.
No, it's going to be interesting. Those first 4 games, because the Eagles are going to be favorite most likely in all 4. And if they get off to, say, a 2-2 start, it could get pretty ugly around here pretty quickly.
Yeah, but Detroit, second year of Dan Campbell, and here we go down the schedule path here. I don't want to get sidetracked, but I think it's not as easy and as foregone as people think. I think this is going to be a challenging start for this team, especially given the fact that they were 2-5 last year. Don't seem to value a whole lot of practice time.
Good point. Good point.
And you have some new guys at key positions. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they start this year.
He's Ed Kracz from SportsIllustrated.com, Eagles Today. Make sure you guys go lock in on Ed's Kracz pieces. Those guys do an amazing job over at Sports Illustrated. Make sure you guys keep it locked on the top 25. I think number 4 is coming out today by way of John McMullen. Ed, thank you so much for being a part of the show. I appreciate you for making my job that much easier. Grateful to you, man.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed.
Oh, man, John, great shows thus far. You guys, make sure you guys keep it locked. Make sure you guys smash that like button. Make sure you guys also subscribe to JAKIB Sports and also check out John McMullen's pieces on JAKIBsports.com. As my man Jody Mack always says, keep it locked. We're going to put a ball on the show.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Action News at 11 with Rick Williams. It's the team you trust to bring it all together. The stories that impact your community. A sports roundup for the locals. And the AccuWeather forecast you depend on. Action News at 11 with Rick Williams.
field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake a mom. Mama go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Welcome back to your dose of Burns 365. He is John McMullen. I am Tone DeShields II in for Jody Mack. And super grateful to John for making today so smooth for you guys. And grateful to guys like Jeffrey Kerr from CBSSports.com. Grateful to Ed Kracz from Sports Illustrated. Those guys were always destined to do great things on this program like they always do. And John, man, again, so far so good. It's been a great show, and I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you, Tone, stepping in the chair late. Obviously, Jody getting sick, under the weather, testing positive for COVID. We hope he's getting better. Show
Definitely.
number 318, though, of Burst 365. I checked that off. Your first one in the hosting chair. Did a great job. I appreciate it.
Jody, I hope I made you proud, my man. I hope I didn't make the seat a little bit too big for you to fill next time you come back.
Yeah, you're Wally Pippin, Jody Mack. You're Wally Pippin. That's an old school reference. Do you get that reference?
Man, I might have to do my research on that one.
Yeah. What research? Wally Pip.
Wally Pip, got you. Yeah. Wally Pip. While I still have you, we have a couple minutes left for the show. I have a couple questions for you really quickly. First, at what moment in that 2017-2018 season, what was the moment that you realized, oh, wow, this Eagles team may be for real?
Carolina game.
You know what? Yeah. That was the exact game for me, too. I tell people all the time, that was the game that told me, oh, this team is legit. On the road, Thursday Night Football. It was a nail-biter, but they got it done. And they were more than competitive. It seemed like Carolina was trying to keep up with them versus the other way around.
Well, I think the key to the season was Jake Elliott's 61-yard field goal. But I think and a lot of reporters who were covering the Eagles at the time, we saw that Carolina game and were like, oh, this team's good. We didn't see it to that point. We said this team's better than we expected. After that game, we said this team's good. This team's legit. And one of the things I argue people yell at me for is the underdog theme that everybody embraced, and obviously the mask and Lane Johnson. This team wasn't an underdog. This team only became an underdog when Carson Wentz got hurt. If Carson Wentz doesn't get hurt, they're heavily favored over Atlanta, heavily favored over Minnesota. Now they're probably not favored in the Super Bowl because
weren't the Eagles the first number one seed to be considered underdogs in every single game in the playoffs?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it was because of a strange situation. But I think the mentality was people didn't respect the Eagles. No, everybody knew the Eagles were good. They just thought, oh, they lost their quarterback, so they're cooked. But everybody knew they were a good team. Everybody knew they would have been favored over Atlanta and Minnesota. Again, New England's a little bit different because of their history. They probably wouldn't have been favored there. But, yeah, kind of, but as long as the players and coaches embrace it, it worked for them, it doesn't matter. But that Carolina game was, maybe this version of the Eagles will have that type of game. Who knows?
I'm glad you brought that up. And this is my final question before we close out the show. Which games on the schedule for you are the litmus test games? Which game on the schedule for you could be the pseudo Carolina game? What game are you looking forward to let you know how serious this Philadelphia Eagles team is?
Well, I mean, it kind of depends how the early season goes. Are they 4-0? Coming out of that first four, they're going to be favored all four of those games. I suppose there's a slight chance if they lose in Detroit, maybe they're not favored against Minnesota or Washington. There's a slight chance, but very unlikely. If they come out of that 4-0, you're going to say, well, they're good, but they beat a bunch of bad teams. Can they beat Arizona? Can they beat Dallas? Probably Arizona early in the season because it's on the road. If they really dominate that game. And then the Cowboys are the Cowboys. And look, the late season game on December 24th in Dallas, in Arlington, actually, I'm a stickler. That's a tough spot because that is Christmas Eve, obviously, but also the third of 3 straight road games. And they're going to have a tough time winning that one, barring injuries if everybody's relatively healthy. So they have to beat Dallas. I think week 6. I think it's week 6. I don't have the schedule. Something like that.
Yeah.
They got to win that game. Have to.
Agreed. And on that note, you guys, look, regardless of how it goes down, get excited about your Philadelphia Eagles, you guys. Get excited. Yes, there are some unknowns with Jalen Hurts. There are some unknowns about the defense, Jonathan Gannon. There's so many things that we're completely unsure about. Most of this, you guys, we're guessing. We're making educated guesses based off our experience, based off of trends, based off history. But Eagles fans, do not fret. Get excited. You guys have John McMullen. You guys have Jody McDonald. And you guys have me behind the scenes pulling the strings for Birds 365. Hey, John, you're going to be here tomorrow, right?
I'm going to be here. Jody might be here. Tone, you're going to be here, right?
Most definitely. Either I'm pulling the strings from behind the scenes or listen, I'm in the host seat with my man, John McMullen, holding it down for Jody Mack while he gets better. Because listen, a sick Jody Mack, trust me, you guys don't know. He would be here right now, but he's physically unable. He would be here with one leg, one arm. He will get it done. So shout out to the man, Jody Mack. Get well soon. And I'm going to do my best Jody Mack impression. John, I'll see you in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.